Hello, I'm Dr. Joaquin Barroso from the Institute of Chemistry at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. 2019 is almost over, and with it also is the International Year of the Periodic Table, which was designated as such by the UN and the IUPAC to celebrate the sesquicentennial, that is the 150th anniversary of the publication of the periodic system by Dmitry Mendeleev in 1969. Aside from being a huge intellectual achievement and a very useful tool, the periodic table has also inspired a lot of everyday items, of which I've gathered a few. But today I'd like to talk about two neckties which I use periodically, and yes, there will be lots of puns today. The first one is this, the one I'm wearing right now. I bought it in Germany in 2017 at the Deutsches Museum in Munich, when I attended the last WATO Congress. It has a very sober design, so it is the one I use more often. The second one is a bit flashier, so I don't take it out as much, but it's actually very dear to me. I bought it in 1997 during the 5th Congress of North American Chemistry, which was my first Congress back when I was an undergraduate student. As you can see, there are various elements which date them. Yes, there will be more puns. Of course, the texture and the pattern underneath, but particularly the use of onilquadium through onilseptium. You see there for elements 104 to all the way through 107, which are now officially named Rutherfordium, Dubnium, Seaborgium, and Borium, respectively. This necktie has a personal significance to me in a threefold way. Back then, in 1997, when I got it, Mexican chemist Dr. Mario Molina had recently been awarded a Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2 years before. So he was and still is a veritable rock star. Just before the official inauguration, which was presided by him, a couple of friends and I spotted him walking through the halls of the convention center, so we ran to say hi and have our picture taken with him. But back then, there were no smartphones, no selfies, so I handed my camera, which was not even a digital camera, to a third person for him to take the picture. I later on learned he was the president of the Mexican Chemical Society, so yeah. But back then, you had to place a roll of film, and you couldn't look at the picture until the film got developed days later. And as it turns out, I didn't place the roll correctly, so the picture wasn't there at all. I mean, I took the picture, but I just never got it. Well, never mind, right? Also, in that Congress, during the seminars, I remember attending one on crystal engineering, because back then I thought I wanted to become an inorganic chemist. But I also attended that seminar to listen to Professor Jacobo Gomez Lara, who was a highly esteemed and deared professor from the Institute of Chemistry here in Mexico. And during the Q&A session for one of the talks, I made a few questions. I engaged in conversation with a researcher, and another young researcher sitting on my left engaged with me in conversation also regarding those same questions. And I even got to ask him even more. We were talking for a few minutes between talks, and he invited me and the other two friends I was hanging out with at the session to have dinner with him later on. During that dinner, he talked to us about the chemistry he was developing. And he talked to us about what our interests in chemistry were. And he even invited us to join his newly formed team at the Arizona State University. That researcher was no other than Omar Yagi, who is now a rock star in his own right for the invention and development of MOFs, metal organic frameworks, a feat that will someday grant him a Nobel Prize of his own. No doubt about it. Now, because of life and the sudden change in branches I took from inorganic to physical chemistry, I declined ultimately his invitation to join him. And thus, I also declined the opportunity of working with a future Nobel laureate. Now, I'm not complaining. I love the path I took, but the what if question is always there. And finally, this necktie reminds me of the path I took, because being my first Congress, it was also the first time I got to see chemistry as something more than a hard science, but also as a human activity, as something done by a large group of people who share a passion for knowledge, discovery, and understanding of nature. I think it was the time I consolidated my, let's say, calling as a chemist and as a researcher. So, in short, this flashy red and blue necktie reminds me of the things that were not, but that actually were, like my picture with Professor Mario Molina, which I never got to replace. It also reminds me of the things that could have been, but in the end were not, like me working under Omar Yagi. And finally, it reminds me of the things that became. And just as chemical mix and give rise to new chemicals, I believe that Congress was the catalyst that forged the path I took down the line, not without a few detours down the way, of course. And well, I guess that's it. Thank you if you made it to the end of the video. I'm Joaquin Barroso, asking you to always imitate molecules and react. Happy holidays.